Thank you.
I see you brought an audience.
We did.
An entourage.
They keep me straight. This has been such a busy week.
Violence Prevention Coalition within the Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association. You can follow him at LTG Davis. Governor, how are you?
Good. I'm great. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having me back. It's awesome to be with you at such a historic event.
What a convention, huh?
It is amazing. Last night was truly an amazing convention, but also a special moment for me to have the opportunity to address a national audience. And so talk about all the great work the Biden-Harris team has delivered for Pennsylvania as it relates to infrastructure. So we've had an amazing convention. I think today is going to be equally as amazing with former President Obama.
I want to say that was about 20,000 people in there last night, because they went all the way up to the ceiling.
It was packed.
Was that the biggest crowd you've ever addressed in person?
Yes, it was absolutely the biggest crowd that I've addressed in person. We had a big rally in Philadelphia when we were running for governor and lieutenant governor, Josh Shapiro and I. And I think there was probably about 14,000 people when former President Obama and President Biden came to campaign for us. But that was certainly the biggest audience. I could hear the Pennsylvania delegation cheering me on, and so that gave me the courage to get out there and do what I needed to do.
That's nice. There's something about these crowds all experiencing the same emotions at the same time. It almost becomes its own organism.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the energy in the hall last night was electric, and I think it's really emblematic of the excitement that folks have for Vice President Harris and her candidacy.
How were you even able to go to sleep after that?
Oh, it's really easy. When you started, our morning started about 6:30 here, and it's nonstop till about midnight. And so by the time you actually lay down, it doesn't take much.
They're making you work here.
Yeah, they're making you work.
I mean, it's you, and it's Pennsylvania, and it's everything. So what do they have you doing?
So I have been in the morning. I spent a bunch of time going around to different delegations. I was at the Florida delegation, obviously Pennsylvania. I went to Maryland. We've been moving around all over the place. And so this afternoon we were doing a bunch of different events. I did a brunch with the Collective PAC to help support minority candidates who are running for office. And so really just talking about the message of Vice President Harris, encouraging people to enjoy the moment. But when we leave the convention, be ready to go back to their respective communities, be ready to organize, mobilize, and turn out the vote to win this election.
How's Pennsylvania looking?
I feel good about Pennsylvania. I feel like we have a strong ground game. I think we have about 17 field offices open across the state compared to one office by Donald Trump in the entire state. Since Kamala Harris has been at the top of the ticket, we had nearly 40,000 new volunteers sign up to support her campaign in Pennsylvania. So I feel good. I think we have a lot of work to do. We know presidential elections are close in Pennsylvania. I think this election will be equally as close, but we have the ground game. We're going to own the doors, and we're going to make sure we turn folks out to vote and really make the contrast clear at what's at stake in this election.
How is the governor doing? Is he bitter? Is he okay?
No, the governor is phenomenal. He loves being the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I know early on he had said he was struggling with leaving. And so I think he's excited to be able to continue to do the work that he's been doing. I'm excited that I'm going to continue to have Josh Shapiro as my governing partner. And we're going to be able to keep delivering real results for working class families in Pennsylvania. And we're going to do everything we can. We're going to work our butts off to make sure that we elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as our next president and vice president.
And he's in a good position for the future. Young enough?
He is young, and he's just somebody who gets stuff done. And I think that's never a bad currency in politics or in governing. And so I know Josh Shapiro's future is bright, but he's excited to continue doing the work we've been doing in Pennsylvania.
There's something I want to bounce off you, and it's something I'm calling the Democrats' muscular new patriotism.
Okay.
Right? This idea of freedom. Like we're pulling that back. That's ours now. And yes, this is America, and you can be whatever you want to be in America, and that's fine with us. And it's just this full-throated patriotism, which hasn't really been a hallmark of Democratic politics.
No, it's amazing. The fact that, and I'll use my own personal story as an example. I'm the proud son of a union bus driver and a hairdresser. Literally, my dad's driving a bus today in the city of Pittsburgh to help folks get where they need to go. To go from a working class family in an aging steel town in southwestern Pennsylvania to addressing the Democratic National Convention as Pennsylvania's first black lieutenant governor, the youngest lieutenant governor in the country, that's the American story. And we need to be able to empower people to live the American dream here, whatever that looks like for them. We need to make sure women still have the right to make their own reproductive health care decisions. We need to make sure parents still have the ability to make their own decisions about what their kids should learn and should see. It doesn't sound like freedom when they're talking about taking away women's right to choose, or banning books, or when they tell workers that you can work 80 hours a week but you can't join a union
or take a break,
or take advantage of by your employers. We want to protect real freedom as Democrats, and I think that's ultimately what resonates with everyday Americans, and I think that's what our country was founded on.
Yeah, that's right in the right vein of what I'm talking about. Now, what is your relationship with her?
With Vice President Harris, so we have been extremely close. So in Pennsylvania, I chair the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency and lead a lot of our gun violence prevention efforts. We've worked really closely through her efforts leading the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. I've known Vice President Harris since she was a United States Senator, and so I'm truly excited about her candidacy, not just because of the great things she's going to do in office, but about a year ago, I became a father for the first time
Congratulations.
to a baby girl. She's going to be 1 in 3 weeks, and I'm just so excited that my daughter is going to grow up and be able to see herself as the president of the United States. Representation really does matter, and so she's not going to have to question whether black women can have a seat at the table. She's going to know that black women can lead the table, and I think that's inspirational, not just for African Americans, but for everyone who maybe hasn't seen themselves represented in the halls of power.
It's also, this is not original to me, but it's also been widely noted that they're campaigning with so much joyfulness, so much positivity, rather than this dark vision of America. And it's a throwback to the ye olden days of campaigning and politics, when politicians would sell Americans on the idea that America's great and we can be even greater.
Elections are always about the future.
Or they should be.
And people vote based on the future. They vote on making sure, because they want their children to have a better life than they had, or they want to be able to have them achieve the American dream. And they vote for the candidates that lay out a vision. I think the contrast in this election couldn't be clearer. We saw what Donald Trump did for 4 years as president. We know that he left our country with a raging pandemic. We know he left our country with an economy that was on its knees because small business was shuttered. We know that he let gun violence get out of control under his watch. So it's time to elect a leader who we know is going to deliver real results. Donald Trump had his chance to lead, and unfortunately, he failed America.
Now tell me about your anti-gun efforts. We've talked about this before, that you witnessed a terrible shooting, got really involved in gun control, but that is such a long-term project in America, isn't it?
It is a long-term project, but we're making a lot of progress here in Pennsylvania. We're standing up the first Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the Commonwealth, which I'm excited to lead.
What will the office do?
So they're going to help coordinate our efforts across state departments to make sure that we are putting the resources that we need to combat gun violence, but also to make sure we are spending taxpayer dollars efficiently and we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. I'm proud that in our last budget, we passed a bipartisan budget by bringing Democrats and Republicans together to invest $45 million to help take on gun violence in our communities. For the first time, we invested in $11.5 million in after-school programs to give young people a place that they can call their own during those critical hours between 3 and 6 p.m.
I think that makes such a huge difference, don't you?
It makes a huge difference. We need to say to young people that we value them. We need to give them safe spaces. I grew up going to a Boys and Girls Club. I'm a club kid. And unfortunately, those opportunities aren't there for young people. And,
Is it the money?
I think it has become the money. But I think in the wealthiest country in the world, we should be investing in our future, and that's our young people.
It was the mayor of Atlanta who was telling me on this show that they were doing midnight basketball, right? And crime was terrible in Atlanta. They started midnight basketball. They were doing people's hair. They were doing nails. They had music. They had food. Everyone would come, and the crime rate went down.
Right. We need to make sure that we give young people safe spaces, that we give them opportunities, and we give them the opportunity to live the American dream, whatever that looks like, whether they want to go into a workforce development program, whether they want to start a small business, whether they want to go to college. We want it to be affordable, but we need to create multiple ladders of opportunity for folks to succeed.
And they're not complicated.
It's getting back to the basics in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and as you say, like the richest country in the world ought to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Give people somewhere to go. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Governor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to coming back soon.
Yes, really, really great. Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, he's a Democrat, the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Coalition within the Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association. You can follow him at LTG Davis. Have a great convention. Thanks for sitting in. Coming up in just a few, John Fugelsang. Stay with me. I'm Julie Mason. This is Sirius XM.
Wonderful. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Yes,
Anytime you need me, give me a holler.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello. Thanks, Sean. Hello. You come to your senses and bunked me yet? Or are we going to do this?
It all hangs on the next couple minutes.
Oh my God, I have to get lunch. I have to get lunch.
Are you low blood sugar?
I'm so low blood sugar. I'm about to start treating people like, Donald Trump Jr. treats the staff. I throw a phone at someone.
I'm so happy to have you on my show, finally.
I'm so happy to be back on your show. I'm so honored. And if you're going to sit up in the skybox again tonight,
Yeah,
you can always jump in
skybox.
with me and talk to me a little bit.
100%.
All right, good, because I was by myself. I was having to fill like 10 minutes and just like talk and talk
That
and talk.
drives me crazy.
Because we thought we were going to be throwing to my pre-tapes, but they were all too long, and they were saying, "Well, skip this one, do this one," and so it wasn't long enough to play anything, and I'm just by myself, just
Tap dancing.
I mean, I wrote so much yesterday because I knew it might wind up being like, John, can you just talk and fill for 12 minutes? Yeah, sure. No guests, no calls, no pre-tape. Yeah, I can talk for 12 minutes, and yeah, I did like half my act.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored, John.
Stop. I'm honored. I think you're awesome.
We play you on my show all the time.
You do? You play my clips?
We play your clips almost every night on my show.
Wow. All right. Okay.
You booked the best guests. And,
That's PF.
well,
I'm Julie Mason. You're joining the Love Fest. John Fugelsang is an acclaimed comedian and television host. He's host of Tell Me Everything, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12 p.m. East on Sirius XM's Progress Channel 127. Follow him at John Fugelsang. How are you?
I'm delighted to be here. I feel like Ringo. I can't believe I'm invited. It's great.
We were just talking about having to fill when, at like convention nights. What is the longest you've ever had to fill time? And listeners were talking about like when nothing's happening and a host just has to keep talking.
Well, I don't know if your listeners know this, but what happened was at Sirius XM, they let the chimp throw the dart, and it landed on my headshot. That's how I got to do my slot at What the Hell O'Clock, 9 to midnight on Progress. And when I first took over, some folks warned me, you're never going to get calls that late. You're never going to get live guests that late, and it's going to be doom central. So when I began the show, when we worked afternoons for years on another channel, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse to come to Progress right before the pandemic, and I approached it as saying, okay, I've got to have 3 hours of content every night. If I have no guests and nobody calls, how am I going to fill this dead air? And so I over-prepare a lot, and so it was a good habit to have. The pandemic wound up saving us because in the pandemic, suddenly everybody was home, and I sort of shifted my show from being let's beat Donald Trump to being like, hey, let's do some pop culture call-in topics. What's your favorite 90s action film? What's the best opening band you ever saw at a concert? Who's the best stand-up you ever saw? In the pandemic, everybody was so freaked out, and we were all doom and gloom. I was bringing COVID stats every night. Here's the hospitalization rate worldwide, death rate worldwide, and I just began making it goofy, and suddenly we got so many calls, and we built up a whole audience at the end of the world. And so I still have my fill skills, because last night there were times when we had pre-recorded interviews in the day and thought, we'll throw to one at a break, but the breaks were like 5 minutes long, and they would say, carry this speech, don't carry this speech, and I'm up there just waiting to be told, okay, we'll listen to Jamie Raskin, I'll talk over this one. So I just had so much information about the convention, the history of conventions, the history of Chicago, the history of this building. You know how it is.
Yes, I do.
When you're a mook like me, you got to over-prepare because you have to assume you'll have nothing clever to say.
Exactly. I'm the same. I'm the exact same. But I over-prepare to not be nervous.
Me too.
Right? Because I feel if I have too much material, I'll be
This
fine.
is how it is in stand-up. I mean, you have the material so you can play.
Right.
And if you need to, you fall back on the material.
Tell me about your book, because I cannot wait to A, read it, B, have you on to discuss.
Well, it won't be for a while. It's coming out next year. I just submitted the manuscript this week to Simon & Schuster, and it was long, 400 and something pages, but
Wow.
I cut 200 pages out.
Man.
It's a book about how to use the Bible when debating a right-wing Christian fundamentalist or nationalist. It's called Separation of Church and Hate.
Nice.
You don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to use it. It's a guide for atheists and sane believers. And it's more or less how right-wing folks, it's not anti-conservative people, they're very nice. We're going after the fundamentalists and the I find some of the nicest people are conservative Christians. I don't like who they vote for, but they're often nicer than liberals. I'm half Southern. I'm half Brooklyn. This is about the haters. And it's about how on every issue that divides us, abortion, LGBTQ issues, immigration, poverty, healthcare, feminism, the end of the world, racism, anti-Semitism, on every issue, the right wing is against Jesus. They're against his teachings. We say we're going to take every word of this as literal fact, and here's why. I have for years, I've talked about this because I was raised abnormally religious, and when my mother gave me permission to tell the world that I was never allowed to say that my mother had been a nun, and I was never allowed to say my dad had been a Franciscan. It wasn't until I debated Jerry Falwell on Bill Maher
that you were allowed to to come out.
I said, Mom, I want to do more of this. I want to call these guys out because I don't like what they're doing to the religion of my parents. They're using Christianity as a cover for cruelty and meanness and getting power.
Well, they've twisted it and distorted it.
No, they've rejected it. They've rejected the Jesus part. There's look, we say the word Christians. It's two groups. There's Christ followers and there's Jesus Fun Club. Jesus Fun Club doesn't read the Jesus parts. They don't follow him. He's their mascot, not their Messiah. Jesus is a prop these Trump voters wave around. Jesus in the Bible is this peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary, hangs around with lepers, hookers, and crooks, never speaks English, isn't American. Jesus never said thee or thou or thy, anti-wealth, anti-death penalty, 100%. Anti-public prayer, Matthew 6:5, never anti-gay. I'll show you where he was pro-gay, actually. Never anti-abortion, never fought for tax cuts for the wealthiest Nazarenes, never said torture's okay under some conditions, never asked a leper for a copay, long-haired, brown-skinned, that's in Revelation, homeless, community organizing, anti-slut shaming, unarmed, commanded his followers to put away their sword, never said the state should force pregnant people to be pregnant against their will, or rape victims to be pregnant against their will, anti-slut shaming, Palestinian, liberal Jew. That's the guy. And in Matthew 25, the judgment of nations, he gives his criteria for a Christian nation. And it's got nothing to do with how much money you give the church, how much you scream at women outside clinics, how mean you are to trans children. Jesus tells people, the ones who are my followers are the ones who do these things, and the ones who aren't my followers are the ones who praise me and don't do these things. And the things the character of Jesus lays out, and this is all apocalyptic, so nut jobs will like it too. You take care of the poor, individuals and nations. Because our fundamentalist friends say, well, Jesus told us to take care of them. Didn't say government puts his gun to my head and taxes me. No, Jesus supports paying taxes for government to redistribute. That's what render unto Caesar means. So Jesus supports paying taxes for government redistribution. He lays it all out. How you treat the poor is how you treat me. How you treat the sick, individuals and nations, you will be judged by. How you welcome the stranger, individuals and nations, is how you will be judged. And how you treat people in prison. That's it. Jesus gives us his blueprint for a Christian nation. Have you ever heard of a Republican fighting to put that on a public school wall?
No,
or a courthouse
100%
wall?
no. 100% no.
Have you ever heard a Republican quote Jesus, Julie?
Yes.
They quote St. Paul, and they think it's Jesus. They quote Leviticus a lot. They quote Book of Revelation. They quote the Left Behind books. I don't hear a lot of Jesus overturns the death penalty in Sermon on the Mount. He overturns eye for an eye. So and never mentions abortion. The Bible's not against abortion. Judaism's not against abortion. Abortions are legal and free in Israel. How did these flock-fleecing Pharisees gain control of the narrative and gaslight 2 generations of Americans to think that criminalizing abortion has anything to do with what their mascot talked about? If you protest legal abortion because you are so deeply Christian, but you support executing prisoners, which Jesus directly opposed, then the rest of us are no longer obliged to take your claim of piety seriously. And they use it for camouflage. And I'm in the camouflage removal business. I'm tired of it. I want to see Democrats call them out. You don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to call out these hypocrites and these blasphemers.
That's amazing, because I for so long, John, internalized the idea that I acknowledge and can respect that a Christian does not like abortion.
So do I.
Right?
And I'm not saying the Bible's pro-abortion or that Jesus is pro-abortion. What I'm saying is the Bible's not anti-abortion. They'll quote Jeremiah, "Before you were in the womb, I knew you." That's God telling Jeremiah that he was always destined to be a prophet. That is not God telling Jeremiah that governments should force teenage rape victims to be pregnant against their will by their stepfathers. And by the way, later in Jeremiah, he has his big lament, and he says, "Oh, my life is so awful, I hate being a prophet. It would have been better if I had been killed in the womb," which shows in the exact same chapter the fundamentalist quote that killing babies in the womb was a thing that people did in Jesus' day. Romans did it. The Egyptians did it. We have records that abortion existed. Jesus never saw fit to mention it, nor did Judaism. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. They have a theology built on a tower of lies. And the Democratic Party's let it happen. The media's let it happen. They have allowed Jesus' ministry to be poisoned and just prostituted by these godless whores. And I mean no disrespect to godless people or whores when I say it.
I think
some of my favorite people are godless and whores, so much respect and love.
I will say in my own defense, I did not have the information I needed.
Neither
You
did I.
obviously have been steeped in religion your whole life. Did you debate it at home?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, my dad was a guy. My dad's grand plan for his child rearing. His goal was to make me too Christian to fit in with the liberals, and too liberal to blend in with the Christians. And I'm happy to say every therapist I've ever had has agreed his plan worked perfectly. They raised
You
us to
wanted
be
a misfit.
Well, he was a Franciscan brother. He wore the Jedi robes and married a nun, and they wanted us to be progressive, free-thinking Catholics, which is why I do stand-up, because I can't afford the therapy I require. And it reached a point where I just got so sick of it. I stopped kissing the ring at the Catholic Church. Eventually, the thing that made me stop identifying that, I mean, it'll always be my asexual orientation, but the treatment of women, more than anything else, the fact that these guys in dresses believe that the Virgin Mary is not fit to say Mass. And I couldn't get past it. By the time I was a late teenager, that and the death penalty the Catholic Church is great on. And they're the greatest force in the world for fighting poverty, the most powerful force in the world against the death penalty. I mean, even a pope like Benedict, even a sourpuss like that said nations have a responsibility to provide health care for their poorest residents. Like, they're great on some things, and they don't get enough credit for it. This guy, Francis, is dynamite on so many areas, including abortion and LGBTQ. But it was the whole no knob, no job that drove me away from it, because I grew up around a lot of nuns, and I just couldn't believe. And Jesus, for 1,000 years, priests could marry. The first pope, St. Peter, was married, but the church didn't want them leaving land and wealth to their kids. So in 1139 A.D., Pope Innocent II made celibacy the law, not because Jesus was a bachelor, not because sex was icky, but because the church was greedy, way before Da Vinci Code. And I just got sick of seeing Christianity be a cover for meanness, and our media culture doesn't call it out. Mike Pence can sit up there and talk about his godforsaken Religious Freedom Act, and this is against Christians, and it goes against our values to have to provide goods and services for these homosexuals. And no media ever said to him, at what point in your holy book, at what point in the Jesus parts, does the character of Christ drive the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? Jesus is not homophobic, and none of y'all follow Leviticus. They want to say Leviticus 18, shall not lie with a man as with a woman. That's an abomination. Well, all right, but it says nothing about, like you look at Leviticus, you have to stone children to death if they're gluttons or drunks. Jesus uses that against the Pharisees. People who work on Saturday have to be stoned to death, and adultery. So if you believe that gay people are sinners because of Leviticus 18, Leviticus 20 commands you to stone Donald Trump to death 3 times, which you should not do. But again, everyone picks and chooses the parts of their holy books they want to follow. When they do it to weaponize it, to hurt a minority, the figure of Jesus commands you to love? Boo-boo. I'm going to call you out using your own book. We got to thump the Bible thumpers with the Bible. It's some bullshit, and it's an unfair advantage Republicans get, because they have a religion that is not based in the Jesus parts, and they need to be called out for it.
That's amazing, and I feel like progressivism is overdue for a book like yours to explain how to sort of parry these arguments.
There's a lot of good ones, but they're all written by theologians much smarter than me. I have dick jokes. That's what I'm bringing to the table, Julie. I don't
But that's going to bring everyone
any
to the
insights
book.
or theological brilliance. Just a lot of dick jokes to try to, for the kids. For the kids.
Yeah, always for the kids. That's wonderful. That's great. So it comes out next year.
Yeah. Separation of Church and Hate. I will be on your show relentlessly flogging it.
So great.
Whoring myself when the time comes.
Fabulous.
I literally turned in my manuscript Sunday night. I was up till
3 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. We had the sexy liberal show here. We had Governor Pritzker on stage and Mark Hamill and Chairman Harrison and Congresswoman Chakowski on Saturday. Sunday I was up till 4 a.m. writing this thing, and then here at my first ever convention, and
it is not your. Haven't I seen you at a convention?
I've been to the Grammys about 16 times. I've been to the Golden Globes and all the award shows I used to do with other TV work in another life. But no, I've never been to one, and I think I'm very fortunate to come to this one as my first.
Yeah, this is a really important one to be.
I mean, I might not. It's going to be hard to top this one,
right?
I mean,
right. All the others are going to be dull.
I think I might be done with this. Yeah, this is like Buzz Aldrin. I walked on the moon. It speaks. Sorry, guys.
John Fugelsang is the man. He's an acclaimed comedian, television host. He's host of Tell Me Everything. If you like what you hear, check him out Monday through Friday, 9 to 12 p.m. East on SiriusXM's Progress Channel 127. And he says he plays a lot of my clips.
I just want to say you are such a great broadcaster. You are so the best at what you do. I pretend to be as good as you, and we play your clips all the time on my show because you get the best interviews, and you get these people to be real and say things.
Thank you, John.
Thank
John
you.
Fugelsang. Find him at John Fugelsang. That really means a lot. Huge thanks to Patrick Friesen and Johnny Foster. I'm Julie Mason. This is SiriusXM. It's good to see you. I'm sorry?
Is John done?
John's done.
Another one of these.
Yeah.
You wait like 4 minutes while I get this book set up? Okay. Okay. Shoot. See, he's so powerful. They're in this big switcheroo. She's in on it. I don't know. Let me get my hair right. No, just keep it. Thank you. Turn the volume up, the music up loud.
Julie Mason.
Hi.
Hi, I haven't met you before. I'm Steve Nicotopoulos.
Steve Nicotopoulos?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to say hi before you left. Sorry if you're in the middle of anything.
No, I'm just in the middle of pulling out.
Okay.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks for saying hi.
Julie, go sign some autographs.
Yeah.
My people. My radio.
Blur.
I'm going to say, the only reason I have a subscription is for your show.
Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, before you walk out,
Yeah.
I wanted to see if I
maybe
could get a
you'll
picture
just-
with you.
Of course, I love that.
Okay, thank you. How's Diego?
You want to be on the end? Okay.
You see, I'm a
Yeah.
listener.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for being on the air.
Like, we're going to drink by. Yeah.
Do you guys know your guys?
I know, I did one once.
He has a code, but we're not pushing it, but they haven't put it on the website.
I think I called him once and we called him. That's awesome.
So we send them some code, which we have.
I'm Andrew.
They put it in the website so the video appears on the website.
How's Chicago? You want me to send a note to him? What do you need? What do I tell him?
Is the video up on the website?
Is the video
Up? Will it be up on
Hello.
That's up.
Are you going to be in that?
There, I'm Andy, but it was Jennifer last night. Who is it tonight? Who am I talking to? Oh, hi, Johnny. Okay. Hi, Jennifer.
right here?
Good. Yes. This is bad for the video, though. You should be here.
How do you arranged?
He thinks we should be together. That's fine. What do you think?
Well, here we'll just push this back then, and we'll slip him in when he
I
comes.
just thought about when you popped him, I wanted to
Been a bad injury.
What?
I was just thinking of when Terry comes, if he comes, I don't want him to
No, if he comes, we'll just push him right here.
Okay, good.
But
I can use
I think
So you're going to still keep this headphones for
those are his. Okay.
It's too much. Adrian known her for years, and just looked her up because I saw her. I'm like, I wonder what she's doing. The senior advisor in comms. So we have to hit her up.
You gotta. You should make that do it. Seriously.
I will. I'll just say I saw you at the convention.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
You should
Although
take
she-
these off.
Doesn't like my tweets.
Take these off.
Did you get a response? I'm trying to send him an email, and Andy won't let me do that. He's telling me to
I
do
used to say
stuff.
she looks like my mom. She's the
What's
one from
the subject line is live stream?
because Laura Sanchez.
You have to
Dictate it to me.
Yeah, just
What's the subject line?
subject is just get.
Ladies before. That's where I'm at.
I understand. I remember I did that.
Tell me what to say.
1 minute. 1 minute, you guys. Hey.
Don't worry about it. Focus on the show.
Susan. Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can.
Good. Phil, can you hear me?
I hear you, Andy.
Okay, we're going to come on in 1 minute, and when they tell us to start, we all be quiet so I can do the intro. Tom tends to talk over my intro. It's very unprofessional of him.
30 seconds.
Welcome to Real Clear Politics for Tuesday, August 20th. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined by Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and national correspondent Susan Crabtree. And we are coming to you live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And Carl, it is day 2. And for those of us who stayed up late enough last night, we were treated to a historic event, which was President Biden handing off the baton to his Vice President, Kamala Harris. He said in part, "America, I gave my best to you." And the first night's program has received some mixed reviews, but what did you make of Biden's address?
Well, it doesn't get a mixed review for me. I'm giving it I'm panning it. I thought it was one of the worst political speeches I've heard in, I was going to say decades, but actually 3 weeks. It was the worst speech I heard of its kind since Donald Trump spoke at his convention. While Trump was speaking, I honestly thought, Andy, does he want to lose? A quick recap. I won't bore everyone. He spoke for 5 or 10 minutes about being shot very evocatively. We'd heard spin. Phil never believed it, but we were going to get a kinder, gentler Trump. That lasted literally 8 minutes, and then he went off into his speech attacking everybody and going on flights of fancy. I think he even mentioned Hannibal Lecter. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, he did. So this speech, I had a different question, Andy. As Biden goes on and on and on, gives his stock stump speech, complete with the lies about Donald Trump promising a bloodbath and his very dubious origin story about Charlotte. He decided to run when they came out of the woods with tiki torches.
These were all tropes that are part of his standard speech.
Yeah, and I thought, but I had a different question. I thought, can the White House not afford speechwriters? They could have written a lovely, beautiful farewell where this guy could have said, he could have got up there, Andy, he could have said, at first I really hoped to be speaking to you in another way. I wanted a second term. I wanted to run again. I thought I could beat Trump. I still think I could beat him. But you know what? It was pointed out to me I'll be 86 in 4 years, and the reason I'm able to step aside is because I picked Kamala Harris, and she's ready. And I don't mind if you want to give me an applause for picking her, because I did that. The place would have gone nuts. And then he could have said, and he could have given a brief 5-minute speech. I think I'm leaving the country better than I inherited, and it'll be even better 4 years from now. That's all he had to say.
But that would not be Joe Biden. So, Susan, what did you make of the speech?
Well, I felt similarly. There was a few good lines in there. I loved the line where he said, he was too young to run for Congress, and now he's too old to be president. That was a nice self-deprecating point there. But the whole tone and tenor of it was sort of out of sync with what we wanted to see, a swan song from a politician who, I had covered him for decades in Congress, and he's sort of like this feel-good Joe. That's what I remember. Sort of this, backslapping kind of nice, funny, get along, go along, not a real big ideologue back at the time. But instead we got this sort of strident, loud.
He yelled.
He was yelling.
Yeah.
It was just uncomfortable to watch. And similarly, I thought Trump wasted his moment. At the same time, I was on the floor that night, and I loved the moment where he was talking about Corey Comparatori with the firefighter uniform and giving that deference to him, this man who had been shot and killed in front of his family. And it was poignant. It was a very poignant moment. And then we saw this sort of rattling on. And his biggest fan base, they were right there, his base, and they were ready to cheer, and they were not cheering. They were yawning throughout the speech.
Well, also, no one likes to be yelled at. He was yelling at people.
You mean Biden was yelling? And,
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable.
It was a Biden family night, though, as well. He was introduced by his daughter, and his wife spoke. Had the trappings of what could have been a warm family goodbye, I guess, Phil. But do you share our colleagues' feeling that it
he
wasn't
covers
the
the
best
White House?
moment?
He has to be a little more careful.
I'm afraid that I do. I mean, the family trappings were there, and some of the elements that Cannon described actually made it into the speech, but they were drowned out by the very long laundry list of accomplishments that President Biden decided to deliver. Look, last night's remarks were the political equivalent of don't cry because it's over, smile that it happened. Biden is trying to win the breakup with the Democratic Party. I know that's not the most sophisticated political analysis, but they dumped him and he didn't want to go. He fought it for as long as possible. So last night, of course, he's going to take an opportunity to remind Democrats of all of the accomplishments over the last 4 years, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Supreme Court confirmation, what he was able to do to get the economy back on track in his mind. And, the irony in all of this is that Democrats love him now more than ever, now that he's leaving. And they are happy that he's gone because they're with her. And objectively, if you look at the polls, they're better off with her.
Yeah, I wonder about them, how much they really love him. I mean, the one thing that reminded me last night was when I was listening was why this guy was not the candidate right now. All of the sort of worst parts of Biden were on display last night in terms of the yelling, in terms of the sort of meanness, which I sort of came through underneath it. We're going to look ahead a little bit later in the program, but I did want to talk a little bit more about last night. And Carl, I wanted to talk about Hillary Clinton, who spoke. Politico called it her Trump revenge moment. What did you make of the speech?
Well, there was a lot for today. It's going on today. It's going to happen tonight. For the last 2 days, there's been a lot of bile directed at Donald Trump. Somebody had a meme where they added up, the times yesterday, all the speeches put together talked about inflation three times. How many times Trump's mentioned? 147. But this woman, she's earned the right to really dislike this guy. She ran against him. People forget this. It's not that we shouldn't. She carried the popular vote in this country. She did. She didn't win the Electoral College, and I'm not a person who thinks we have to throw out the Electoral College because a thing doesn't go the way I want it to go. But and Clinton, remember Trump brought all these women who'd alleged that after the fact at Me Too against Bill Clinton, put him in the audience. I mean, he ran a really mean and nasty campaign against her.
It was a nasty campaign.
And brought her family into it and called her Crooked Hillary and did all the rest of it. And I think she's earned the right to be pissed off at Donald Trump. She's earned the right to want to beat him. And what she did last night, was she enlisted herself in the cause of Kamala Harris for women. She talked about how her mother and Kamala Harris' mother would be proud of them. And I thought, Phil disagrees with this, I thought she hit all the right notes, and I thought it was a good speech.
Phil, a dissenting view.
Joe Biden was able to do something that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton didn't think he was capable of, and that was win in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. He triumphed where they failed. And so I'm not surprised that she is eager to renew her fight, this time on behalf of Harris, a candidate who sort of she perhaps sees herself in a way that she might not have been as excited for Biden. But I don't see this as altruistic. I see this as politics as usual. And there was a bit of an irony there last night. I mean, the fact that she was even there to address the convention as it was about to nominate Vice President Harris, that's because of what Joe Biden did, not because of the Clinton dynasty.
Interesting. Well, Susan, the chant from the room was "Lock him up" last night during her speech. She did seem to be basking in a certain revenge moment. I think Politico had that part right.
Absolutely. It's interesting to me. She had the lines that I remember from her speech that were good, were when basically she was saying, he is a felon, and talking about his own problems with the law, and that's what inspired the "lock him up" chant. But what I thought she failed was when she said she was going to pass the torch. This was a passing of the torch to the new generation, and right after that moment, she said, "New generation." She started talking about her mother's generation, and I honestly think that she isn't representative of this passing of the torch. She's the old school, and what she's going to do for the campaign, hopefully, in terms of strategy for the Democrats, is she's going to bring out the old feminist voters, women voters that may not be turning out so much for Kamala, certainly not for Trump. They're vile. They just have so much vile for Trump, just like Hillary does. So that's her role. I don't know overall if she's going to be a detriment to this campaign or a net positive, but certainly that's her constituency, and that's who she was appealing to last night.
Well, let's think about Hillary Clinton. The last time she was here at a convention was 1996, when the opening day of the convention, this story breaks about Dick Morris, who was an advisor, and it leads to all this advisor to the Clintons and all this stuff about sexual shenanigans that sort of was a foreshadowing of what was going to happen in 1998, and she can't have forgotten that. And also, she's from here. This is her home state. This is her hometown.
That's right. People forget that. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've got with me Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and our national correspondent Susan Crabtree. So it's an all-star panel. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. What?
McAuliffe doesn't make it, we're subbing out. She's still.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but I want to talk about their appropriation of freedom as a theme. Biden mentioned it last night. All that sort of stuff.
Before Obama?
Yeah, we'll do. I want to do Obama as the last segment.
Yep. Okay.
Before we look at it. Oh, I should have thought of that beforehand. Yeah, that would have been that would be terrific. Yeah.
What I would have loved that Hillary clip, though, that would have been good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're moving
We're
on.
moving on. Oh, you don't have Biden saying that, "Are you ready to vote for freedom?" That was the quote that. Yeah. I think it was sort of at the very end of of his speech. Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. Welcome back to Real Clear Politics. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined by Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and national correspondent Susan Crabtree. And we are coming to you live today from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And guys, I want to talk about a word, and the word is freedom, which has sort of emerged as sort of a theme, not just to this convention, but to sort of the whole Kamala Harris campaign. Joe Biden said last night in his speech, "Are you ready to vote for freedom?" And Susan, we don't normally associate, or we don't conventionally associate the word freedom with the Democrats so much. It's sort of been appropriated by the Republicans really since Ronald Reagan at least. And I'm just wondering about the sort of semantics of this and the use of the word freedom the way they're using it, which is freedom from gun violence, freedom for reproductive rights. It's sort of a different approach to what the word freedom means, and just sort of interesting that it seems to be working so far. What do you think?
Well, no one can discount freedom. It's a positive vibe type of word. I did kind of take issue with Jamie Raskin, who was one of the impeachment managers on Donald Trump's second impeachment, I believe. And he was saying this is the democracy convention. This is the democracy convention. This is the freedom convention. And it seems odd that they can claim the democracy convention after they basically just orchestrated a coup against. I mean, they are disenfranchised all those voters during the primary, millions of voters who voted for Joe Biden, and they sort of just pushed him off. So it's whatever they declare it is. But certainly when it comes to abortion rights, they are appealing to those people who that is their a deciding factor for them in this election. And on that score, I think they are talking about personal freedom and taking it away from what normally Republicans use it for: freedom, personal freedom, freedom from government. And I think that is a positive message, and they are using it to their advantage in that way when it comes to abortion.
Yeah, Phil, I mean, FDR, of course, had the famous four freedoms, two of which were in the Constitution: freedom of religion, freedom of speech. The other two he added were the freedom from want and the freedom from fear. And people have drawn that distinction, the freedom to do something or be protected to do something, and the freedom from something. Freedom from is sort of the progressive aspects of it. But rhetorically, it is a turn, isn't it? Or am I wrong in thinking
No,
that
you're
they've
right.
sort of, it's a different approach. It's something I haven't heard before so consistently from Democratic candidates.
Yeah, I think it's in his Commonwealth speech. FDR talks about how necessitous men, by virtue, are not free. I might be wrong on the exact remarks, but clearly Democrats are trying to take away one of Republicans' most popular talking points. They say, oh, the GOP is the party of freedom? Well, then what is it that you're trying to do when it comes to abortion rights? What is it that you're trying to do with regards to all of these benefits that we have enjoyed that actually affect individuals' lives? So I think it's pretty clever. To Susan's point about Representative Raskin making this argument that the Democratic Convention is a democracy convention, I think, Susan, you're totally right. What strikes me, though, is even as those millions of voters have been disenfranchised now that Biden is off of the ticket, it doesn't seem that those voters care very much. There's much more enthusiasm for Harris, and that's because fundamentally the one thing that Democrats want to be free from is Donald Trump.
Well, yes, but it's our job to educate those voters, Philip. And this word freedom, I mean, I'm sure they focus tested it over at the Democratic National Committee. And it focus group, it tests well. But, Andy, you said that freedom appropriated by the Republicans since the time of Reagan. Well, actually, it was appropriated by Republicans since the time of Abraham Lincoln, when the Democrats were the slave party, the party of defending slavery. And, they're using this. You make an interesting distinction, free from gun violence. I get that. That's maybe clever, Phil, maybe too clever by half, but they use it on abortion, and it really, I think it resonates with women. I do. But let's expand it. This is the party. You can't smoke. You can't use certain words. This is the party of censorship, and freedom. It's a very limited thing when they're talking about freedom. The modern Democratic Party, and you talk about and Phil, they're running against Donald Trump, but they don't want Donald Trump to be free. They've tried to seize all his assets. They've tried to kick him off the ballot in states. They don't want people to be free to vote for Donald Trump, and they've literally tried to put him in prison. They have tried to take Donald Trump's personal freedom away from him. And when you have a crowd chanting "lock him up," that doesn't really sound like the Freedom Party, does it, Andy?
Well, you get no dispute from me on their hypocrisy. I mean, for crying out loud, you have Minnesota Governor Tim Walz saying that Republicans need to learn how to mind their own business, and he gets an applause every time he makes that argument. And yet, this is someone who literally had a snitch line during COVID, so that Minnesotans could very passively, aggressively, as they're wont to do, snitch on their neighbors for breaking protocols. So, but
we're jogging down the street.
We're jogging down the street. But more than anything, the particulars do not matter as much as the vibes do, at least according to the politicians who are sort of trying to energize this moment in machine politics.
Yeah, Tim Walz called it the golden rule, which was to leave us alone. And the leave us alone, that was a catch line in the 80s
I don't have to.
Precursor to the Freedom Call.
That's right. And I can't pull rank on Phil Wegman. He went to Hillsdale College. But the golden rule is not leave us alone. Is it, Philip?
Do you want to?
Is it, Susan? The golden rule? No.
But it does seem to be working, Susan, and it does seem to be something that's happening on purpose. And I'm just thinking as I go ahead through the next couple days how often I'm going to hear the word freedom invoked. I haven't heard liberty yet. They haven't gone all the way to liberty, but they may go there.
Liberty's too close to libertarian.
Yeah, you might be right.
But also, I think that Republicans view freedom in a completely different way. I think a lot of Republicans view it through the national security scope of, we are, thank God to our military for keeping us free, literally free from intrusion from other countries. And this is a different personal freedom that libertarians would maybe agree with, but this is about, I think it's very narrowly scoped from the Democratic side, because usually we are dealing with heavy regulation, heavier taxes when you're talking about progressive policies. The one time we're talking, and they want to emphasize it, no doubt, is on reproductive rights. And that is a central theme of this convention, the central theme of this election, and it will be pounded home because it was winning for them in 2022, and they are appealing to the suburban women voters. They are not going to vote for Trump. They need to get them to the polls, and this is one way they can do it. And certainly emphasizing personal freedom when it comes to reproductive rights is salient among those voters.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I'm talking to Carla Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and national correspondent Susan Crabtree. I'm Andrew Walworth. We are live at the Democratic National Convention. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back after this.
That's good.
Is it good? Any sign of...
It would probably be in 4 minutes or 5
Oh, really?
minutes. Yeah. We have a 4-minute break?
So maybe
That was
he'll
it,
show...
a 4-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's my Diet Coke?
If only there was a button we could press and someone bring Diet Coke.
Over there.
If he shows up, we can do him. If he doesn't show up, why don't we talk about Obama? Oh, Pritzker's talking tonight. Oh,
Hey, look,
okay.
here's here.
Hey!
Let's go.
I want her to come on the radio tomorrow. She should come on the radio.
I guess she
radio
can
tomorrow.
get inside of the perimeter.
No, she didn't linger. She knew we'd ask her. She kept
What?
walking. She kept walking.
What?
That guy was standing there shouting.
I know. I thought someone would move him away. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
That's why I turned this way and I just like...
I know, thank you, but I thought somebody said, hey, listen, just stand over there.
Yeah. All right, so we got...
I don't know, that's not the order, I'm just saying.
Right. No, that's good to know.
I said, so let's mention those.
Yeah.
It's also Pritzker's time. So we got these 3 Chicagoans.
I bought this little external charger the other day.
Oh, that's so smart.
You can introduce and
It
say, okay, you
is
mentioned
like
yours from Chicago.
a charge and a half right there, and it just pops onto the back of your phone. It's
Oh
magnetic.
my
It's
God.
so great.
Where did you get that?
So there's a AT&T stand out there, and it's because I couldn't find an outlet that was free. So I spent $60, but I'm happy
Oh,
with
that's
it.
totally worth it. They still have some.
Oh yeah.
You don't have a bag to put your stuff. Do you have a bag?
I left it inside the
Yeah.
convention hall there, and then I couldn't get back on the floor for a couple hours.
Was this Obama's speech in at Boston in 2004? I think that was right.
Probably.
Yep, Boston. I was there.
So 04 was the Boston Convention. 08
So if-
was
what I'll
Chicago,
do-
and 12 was
Shows
North Carolina.
I'll just... And we're going... I'll
Yeah.
just cut this
Okay.
down a little shorter.
I don't know about the Democrats versus the Republicans.
I'll tell a brief story about him. And
Can't remember which one was which. Boston was Democrat.
No, we can do it during the break.
What was your
What I'm
favorite
saying is
convention?
I'll take a break.
Oh, okay. But I'll
96.
tell this.
San Diego.
Yeah, yeah, you told me about that. Because you had,
I was hanging out with Rich Lowry.
and you were covering the protests back then, right?
No, it was the food was fabulous.
No.
They had this fireworks. It was really pretty. But in terms of substance, probably Boston.
Now we can talk. So.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's do that.
I forgot about that one.
So we're going to talk about Barack Obama, and the other speakers tonight are
Include Michelle Obama, J.B.
Pritzker, and Doug
Don't ask me about J.B. Pritzker. I don't know anything about him.
Okay.
Okay.
I really don't.
Yeah.
10 seconds from you.
I know he's the
That's okay.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined by Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and national correspondent Susan Crabtree. And Carl, tonight, I want to look forward a little bit. We've got a couple speakers tonight lined up, a couple of Chicagoans. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, J.B. Pritzker, governor, and Doug Emhoff. I don't know if Doug Emhoff's from Chicago, but he's going to be here.
Yeah, so Hillary's from here. It's a Chicago night. It's Hillary Clinton was last night, and tonight's more of the same. Listen, there's a local columnist here in Chicago, John Cass. I think conservative. He'd probably call himself. He wrote for the Chicago Tribune for many, many years. He now has his own website, and he writes about the Chicago way. The Chicago way is not meant as a compliment. It's Richard J. Daley. It's bullying people and beating them over the head with clubs. It's graft and corruption and toughness. The city of big shoulders, not minding a well-placed knee in the groin. But the new Chicago way is epitomized by a different kind of politician, and it's Barack Obama, who gets his way through charm and winning minds and pulling strings and doing things, healthy things as far as I can tell. And, he's now, this is his town. This speech is his. And Michelle Obama, she may still be the most popular Democrat in the country as far as I know. She's going to speak. This is the Democrats reminding people who we are. And they've got Bill Clinton tomorrow night. We're the party of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, and without directly saying so, it's intended to remind swing voters that Mitt Romney wasn't in Milwaukee, George W. Bush won't go near Trump, and vice versa, and that's the party of one person. We're the party of this broad array of people centered right here in the biggest city in the heartland. This, sort of unofficial capital of the Midwest, and Barack Obama, who elected twice and could have run 4 times and probably won, is gonna pass the mantle and bless the ring of Kamala Harris.
Phil, you've been doing some reporting on this. What's your take?
Well, I'm going to wait to hear what the former president has to say, but I think that I'm on safe ground if I bet that he's going to shout less than President Biden did last night. And it's bittersweet, but also it's almost as if Obama has shown up after doing some of the dirty work. He did his best to sort of show Biden the door, and it was a soft touch at first. Over time, though, you clearly saw that the Obama contingent of the party was activated and did their very best to convince Biden that he needed to leave or, cost Democrats the White House. So I think that certainly we're going to have a lot of stunning oratory. But we can't forget that this is someone who was very instrumental in sort of pushing Biden out of public life.
And Susan, Michelle Obama is really unique in modern life in terms of first ladies. I mean, she is not only beloved, but really, people thought that she might end up on the ticket, at the top of the ticket, and in the Real Clear betting averages, she was sort of down there, small numbers, 3-4%, but consistently considered, at least by the betting pools, as a possible presidential contender. What are you looking for to see from her tonight?
This is a star power night. 20 years ago, almost to the exact date, you had Barack Obama basically make his political debut in a convention speech that led to his rise to the presidency 5 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later. He is an eloquent speaker. I covered him on a daily basis for 8 years. He is smooth as can be, and he holds the reins of the power in the Democratic Party, more so than Nancy Pelosi. And his wife is immensely popular and could have won this election hands down if she would just entered into it. I believe truly the polls would say that. And I think that some in the Democratic Party really wanted her to run, but she is an apolitical creature. She She does not like politics. She's made no bones about that. But when she comes out on that stage, she has a presence, and she honestly, I think, can bring down the house in ways that no one else could except for her own husband. So the two of them together tonight exactly will remind the party faithful that they had this popular president, even though Joe Biden's numbers have been suffering, and Vice President Kamala Harris was the worst polling numbers in vice presidential history. Now everyone's rallying around and coordinating her, but we had this popular figure not too long ago in the White House, and they still are around to endorse, put their wholehearted endorsement behind Kamala Harris.
You know, I covered the White House for 15 years. Phil's been covering it. First ladies throughout our republic's history have been underestimated for how effective they are. You know, they're typically the last person the president sees at night before he goes to bed. They're very much have the president's ear, and this is first lady after first lady. Anyone you could name, always underrated. And we in the press will discover, this first lady, Rosalind Carter, she's really got a lot of chops, but they weren't overtly political. They wouldn't campaign typically. They were it was understated power. That began to change with Hillary Clinton.
Right, yeah.
Who ran in 92 and said, you vote for him, you get me. She
Yeah,
was
it's
telling
two
us,
for the price of one.
Oh, yes.
telling us the
Remember that?
feminist audiences. And some people liked that, some people didn't. But Michelle Obama took that to another level. She would give we don't know how much influence she had on policy. As Susan points out, she doesn't seem to gravitate towards it naturally. She's not a policy nerd. But she would give speeches, and she would electrify halls. And she has a line. If she had a line, I expect we'll hear it tonight. She would talk about Republicans, and she'd say, "When they go low, we go high." And that brought thundering applause and reminds Democrats of the best part of themselves. And so, yeah, I don't know if Susan, I don't know if she'd been a candidate in her own right. She'd had a different kind of scrutiny, but I agree with you. She has star power times 10.
Yeah, and she wasn't lending that star power to Joe Biden. That interestingly timed Axios story that we all sort of talked about. It was striking that she was upset at, according to sources that Axios quoted, upset that Joe Biden, the way that they treated Hunter's first wife, because she was friends with Hunter's first wife, and so was not campaigning on Joe Biden's behalf. And now we have her here as one of the, main stars of this convention tonight, wholeheartedly backing Kamala Harris. It's quite the swing in the other direction.
Yeah. Well, Tom Bevan isn't here tonight, unfortunately, because J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, is going to speak tonight. And I will say this, so far, Chicago has been fantastic. I think you'd all agree. We've had this incredible weather. The city's great. As far as I can see, the protests have been largely contained. And Chicago looks pretty good right now.
Yeah,
must be a good day for J.B. Pritzker, I'm thinking.
I agree with you. About 5,000 busted through a gate that wasn't properly constructed, but the police quickly rallied. And unlike in 1968, the police didn't decide to stage their own riot and beat the living shit out of these people with billy clubs, which was nice. But look, I agree with you, Andy. We were in Milwaukee. Regular listeners of this show know that. Phil and Susan were with us, and Phil, at the end of the convention, we said, highs and lows, and Andy said, one high, Milwaukee, really, the city and the state of Wisconsin did good. So far, so good here, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So Doug Emhoff, Phil, will be speaking tonight. He might be the next first gentleman.
You mean the first gentleman?
First gentleman, yes. I'm sorry, first gentleman. I'm trying to keep my firsts in line with this convention. But what do you think we'll hear from him? And he's got an interesting role to play.
Yeah, not only will he make history if Vice President Harris wins this thing, but when it comes to the coming election, talk about a character witness, well, it would be Doug Emhoff. He knows the vice president better than just about anyone else. And tonight he is going to present her as a joyful warrior. We've heard so much about joy. It sort of dovetails well with the theme of hope and change from former President Obama. But Emhoff is going to emphasize that it's not just this sort of joy that is without application. Harris, very much in his mind, is a joyful warrior who's going to be shrewd, who's going to take the fight to the other side, and again is going to deliver on this chant that we've heard so much of for the last 8 weeks. When we fight, we win. It's going to be Emhoff's job to illustrate how that will be a joyful conflict.
Yeah.
Andy, we've heard a lot this word joy. I'm interested in what you guys think of it, but it doesn't sound like the people who are saying it are very happy. They sound really angry. The stuff they say about Donald Trump, and they clearly want him. I don't even want to say what they want from Trump, but this is. It's a little bit like a Bruce Springsteen song where you've got this really upbeat tune and these dark lyrics, But Doug Emhoff strikes me as a guy who's not an angry person. We've talked about Michelle and Barack Obama. They can certainly do Ode to Joy.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though, about the general vibe, because they do talk a lot about joy. And at some point it feels like, thou protesteth too much. You hear about it, and then you look, it's like someone's talking to you, but you look into their eyes, and you don't see what their smile is smiling. And it's early in days right now, but I was struck in Milwaukee, where people sort of think, these Trumpsters are going to be these angry sort of zealots and stuff. They seemed like much more to be almost at a picnic. That was
they were also happy.
I got.
They
were happy warriors.
They were happy Trump was alive.
It was a celebration of life.
Yeah, right.
But not in a bad sense. But the Democrats here are joyful that they switched candidates.
Yes, that's
true.
That's
they're so excited that they don't have to deal with last night again and again and again. And you have Doug Emhoff here. They released some of the quotes, and he says, basically, here's the thing about joyful warriors. They're still warriors, and Kamala is as tough as it comes. So after the joyful convention, then we're going to get down to business, and we're going to start fighting really hard.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I'm Andrew Ballworth. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. We'll be back in just a moment.
So I guess no Terry.
Yeah. So, Susan, when we come back, we'll start with the Secret Service stuff.
Do you guys need me for this segment?
Yes.
No? Okay. I thought it was a Secret Service segment.
It is, but
I'm eager to pull string. Learn about this Obama guy. I was in middle school.
Well, that's funny. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Phil, do you know about the speech he's talking about at the 2004 convention he gave the keynote for Kerry.
Yeah. Blew everybody away.
Yeah, but go read it. It's worth reading. And especially do a control search for the word Little League.
Yeah.
And that's the passage that just blew everybody's mind. And think about this. Obama was a state legislator when he gave that speech.
Yeah.
He was running for Senate. He was a state legislature in Springfield. At the day after that speech, he did a breakfast, and I went to it. And we were charmed. The press was. And I went up to him, and he said, I told him, he said, "Oh yeah, I met you last night. You cover the White House for National Journal, which is the old George Bush, Bill Clinton trick. He meets you once, he knows the name of your cat when you were 5. But then he goes, how long have you been there? I go, I've been there 12 years. But if you tell me you're coming, I'll stay." and he laughed and he goes, "Hey, give me a break, man. I'm still in the state legislature."
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You would have loved him.
And
that was in Boston.
Hey, Jennifer, what the hard out is what time? Is it 6:56?
These are Hillary's clips.
Okay. Oh, 56:30. Okay, that's just I'm looking right at the digital clock, so that would give me about.
Wake up.
Thank you for doing this. Philip, 10 more minutes.
Oh yeah, I'm not in a hurry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Susan, you think we can do 10 minutes on the Secret Service, or?
Sure. Yeah, we good.
Phil, I got one more for you. Did you read Addie's story this morning?
I did not.
Story?
It was good.
Read it. She'd never heard of Jesse Jackson before yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's why I assigned her the story. Or Shirley Chisholm. She didn't know who they were.
Really?
And read that story. You talk about being quick on the uptake.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely story.
Is it?
Yeah, so I got faith in you.
Okay, good.
Okay. That's the point.
And welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined by Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon, White House reporter Phil Wegman, and national correspondent Susan Crabtree. And Susan, I want to talk to you in particular about this congressional investigation into the Secret Service. Much of the investigation has been inspired by your reporting. So what's going on?
Well, we are getting somewhere in terms of internally what the Secret Service is doing in response to these security failures at the Butler rally, July 13th. We're well over a month out from that now, and it is Congress is starting to act. I will have more reporting in the next 24 to 48 hours, but I'm getting from sources that the Pittsburgh office is going to be taking the fall for this, not the Donald Trump detail, even though the person in charge of a female agent in charge of the entire security devising that plan was on the Donald Trump detail. And she was the site agent for that particular rally. But they are on, this is news, I'll be breaking some news right now. They're on the Pittsburgh office that was involved in that. All the special agents are on administrative leave. The Donald Trump detail is not on administrative leave. And they're still performing their operations. They're still performing their protective duty. That is a sign that Pittsburgh is going to be the ones that take the fall. You know, the congressional investigation the task force is up and running. They are going to be, I've been talking to whistleblowers that are going to be talking to the task force next week. So that activity is ongoing. But it's interesting to me that there's still some griping. There's a lot of manpower shortages that are going on with the convention going on this week and all these rallies continuing with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump around the country. There is a woman here named Delisa Walker Hall. She is sort of a human capital. That's
and when you say here, you mean here at the Democratic National Convention
in Chicago, and her presence here, being ferried around by a GS-14 special agent driver, is rankling some of the people who on the ground here who have the job to protect and provide security to this event, because they said, this is unprecedented. What is she doing here?
What is she doing here?
She purportedly, I asked the Secret Service, and she is here with the mental health care team to sort of check in on the agents, the poststanders, to make sure everybody is doing okay after what they've all been through and all of the stress and manpower shortages over the last month. But interestingly enough, she did not attend the RNC right after the assassination attempt. Now, they were grappling with that in the days afterwards, but her presence here is raising some suspicions that it's just kind of more waste and abuse and not a good allocation of resources.
Yeah. Well, Susan, I think some of our listeners may know, but maybe not all of them, that you really own this story. I mean, every now and then in a reporter's life, they become the person on a story, and you have really become the person on this story. And people have asked me, said, how did Susan Crabtree end up being the reporter on this story? Phil's going to say
Susan is too humble. Susan is the authoritative reporter when it comes to the Secret Service moments after a history-making assassination attempt on a former president of the United States. These are the types of things that we think are not common and are in the past. We think of them in the past tense in terms of history, and yet our own Susan Crabtree has owned this beat completely, very much living up to that expression, the first draft of history.
And you know what else?
I love my cheerleading team.
Well, you're about to get more. You know, this idea of the Secret Service, you know, they're in the movies, that Clint Eastwood movie, and now they're in the news for all the wrong reasons. But it is not, this is a very serious job, and it's a country with a violent history, the United States of America, with more guns than people. You know, I'll tell you a very quick, funny story. I was going on vacation in Montana in 1994, and my bureau chief said, well, I need a phone number. I said, oh, yeah, there's no phone number. There's no number in the cabin. Well, there was, and I finally, before I left, I said, all right, here's the phone number. He said, I promise I won't call you unless somebody shoots Bill Clinton. And I said, people shoot presidents all the time. I said, you don't call me unless Hillary shoots Bill Clinton. but beneath the joke is, Ronald Reagan was shot. Jerry Ford was shot at twice. We've had 4 presidents who were assassinated. Franklin Roosevelt was shot during the transition. This is very serious work, and these stories, Andy, that Susan's uncovering. We need to get a handle on this agency. It's got a $3-point-something billion budget, and they've got to be able to protect presidents and presidential
and I've only got
candidates.
so much time left in the show, so we've lauded you, Susan, but you've got to answer the question. Which is, how did you pull this off?
Well, I've had some of these sources. Sometimes, you're just in the right place in the right time, and your sources have been developed for 12 years because I was doing these type of stories during the Obama administration when, in the wake of the prostitution scandal in Colombia, when that became public, and there was this hand-wringing of, how did this happen? Why are our Secret Service agents doing this? Then there was a number of fence-jumping incidents, and I was competing with Carol Leonig at the Washington Post, and she got a Pulitzer out of it, and I got to keep my job. So, I feel like I benefited. It's not nothing. I'm still standing. But yeah, some of these people, you have to build trust over time. And as soon as the assassination attempt happened, the sources were coming to me with information that I thought was extremely relevant, such as, we don't usually run drones, even though Thomas Crooks had a drones. That was the first text I got. Please look into the drones for us. Then did you know there was a Jill Biden event on the same day that night, and there was misallocation of resources in these people's estimation between that event and the Donald Trump event. There was denials of security. All this information started flooding into my phone when I was on the way to Milwaukee in the first 24 hours afterwards, and I sort of felt like an obligation to start putting it out there because this is about continuity of government. This is about our ability to participate in democracy. You had Corey Comparatori killed in front of his family in a horrifying scene that almost killed a former president. And it was right before the convention. The timing of it was, terribly important too. And now we need to get to the bottom of it. And the Secret Service basically has been in disarray and have uneven discipline problems for decades. This has gone on. There's been a Blue Ribbon Commission in 2014. They did not follow the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission. Now we see what that has wrought, and it is time to clean up the agency from top to bottom, mainly the 8th floor, leadership.
The leadership on the 8th floor.
Not the rank and file.
And, it is called the Secret Service, so you would think that getting them to talk is not the easiest thing. How disgruntled is the rank and file, and how big is that division between the rank and file and what you call the 8th floor, the leadership?
The rank and file is outraged. They have time and time again made recommendations to try to get these drones and more technology into the Secret Service, getting them up to speed with technology. There's a silly phrase like, our old technology, past technology tomorrow. It's the Secret Service's phrase, making fun of their own ability to, that they have outmoded technology, outmoded protocols, and it's time to revamp it. It's past time.
Well, Susan, thanks so much in keeping us all abreast of this important story. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. That's going to wrap it up for us. We'll be back, though, tomorrow with more from Chicago and the Democratic National Convention. Have a great evening, and we'll see you then.
Of course it is.
Oh. I love that. So that's our
out music was the cool.
Which rapper? Come on. You got this.
Good show.
Thank you. Okay. That's right. Hey, Phil, quit screwing around.
She said, remember when she said that her favorite rapper was
Tupac.
Tupac? And she was like, oh, yeah, I used to listen big in Tupac. It's like, man, they were dead when you were in high school. Stop it.
Oh, I was trying to tell you, Phil, that I liked, my favorite convention was in Los Angeles. It was back in the day. There's